Drop everything you think you know about life and death. Imagine for a moment that the story you've lived your whole life, the tale of birth, struggle, and finality is not the full picture but only a sliver of something much larger. Imagine that what we call death is not an end at all, but more like a curtain, a soft veil between versions of the same ongoing play. I know that may sound unsettling, maybe even ridiculous, especially if you've lived through decades where reality was something solid, where facts felt fixed and death was the ultimate boundary. But the frontiers of modern physics and ancient philosophy are converging now, and they're telling a very different story, one that may bring peace instead of fear and agency instead of helplessness. Let's start not with speculation, but with science. In 2000, physicists conducted what's known as the delayed choice quantum eraser experiment. In this study, a single particle is fired toward a barrier with two slits, and it can behave either like a particle or a wave. Here's the strange part. The way it behaves, solid like a marble or fluid like a ripple, depends on whether or not someone later chooses to observe which path it took. Not before it goes through, but after. In other words, future decisions change the past behavior of a particle. The conclusion is stunning. Reality at the quantum level doesn't lock in until it's observed. That means the world around you, down to the very atoms of your body, isn't just there waiting, it's reacting to your attention. Now ask yourself this: if the universe waits for you to look before it decides how to behave, then what else is it waiting for you to realize? This is not just theory. It's the lived implication of what's known as the observer effect in quantum mechanics. Matter is not matter unless it's measured. The universe is not fixed. It is, in a very real sense, co-authored by your awareness. The physicist John Wheeler, who worked closely with Einstein, once said we live in a participatory universe, where nothing becomes real until it is observed. It's like living in a video game that only renders the trees, the sky, the street when you look at them. Everything else? Still potential. Still waiting. Now combine that with another principle, one that emerges not from laboratories, but from near-death experiences and ancient wisdom traditions. Thousands of clinically dead patients flatlined. No brain activity have returned with detailed memories of events they should have never witnessed. People like Dr. Eben Alexander, a Harvard neurosurgeon and former skeptic, who contracted meningitis and was brain-dead for 7 days, only to come back and report vivid, multi-layered journeys through realms of pure consciousness. His cortex wasn't functioning. Yet his awareness wasn't just present, it was expanded. Similarly, in hospitals across America, people are reporting verified events seen from outside their body: surgeries, conversations, exact details later confirmed while medically declared dead. If the brain is off, then where is that consciousness? It's not just poetic. It's physics. Roger Penrose, Nobel laureate and mathematical physicist, has theorized that consciousness is not a byproduct of the brain, but arises from quantum processes in microtubules inside neurons, suggesting that it may not be confined to the body at all. He's not alone. Max Tegmark from MIT proposes that consciousness could be a form of quantum information, which does not get destroyed, even when the body does. That means, in a very real and scientific sense, you may already be immortal, but in a way that defies the story we've told ourselves about tombstones and silence. I want to bring this closer to you. Think about the moment you nearly stepped in front of a car but stopped just in time. Or the surgery that could have gone wrong but didn't. The illness you recovered from despite the odds. You may have called it luck or divine intervention, but what if scientifically, philosophically, it was something else? What if, as some quantum theorists now propose, your consciousness simply continued in a version of reality where you survived? In one version, your story ended. In this one, it did not. You may have already died more than once, but from your perspective, you only ever woke up. These aren't far-off ideas. They have practical implications. If reality is reactive, then your thoughts matter. If consciousness continues, then fear of death loses its grip. And if you've already survived countless unseen forks in the road, then perhaps it's time to stop living like life is something that happens to you and start treating it like something you're shaping, moment by moment. It's not about pretending that pain or grief don't exist. It's about shifting from passive endurance to participatory creation. Because if the universe is responsive and if consciousness transcends death, then each breath is a chance to re-enter the code, to live not in reaction to what might happen, but in alignment with the reality you wish to call forward. So I leave you with this. What would you do if you knew death couldn't touch you? What decisions would you make if you realized you've already survived the worst again and are still here? Would you speak more boldly? Love more fully? Would you stop rehearsing fear and start rehearsing freedom? Because the simulation is listening. It always has been. Imagine for a moment that you are not merely living in reality, but interacting with a system that is watching you back, adapting, reshaping itself in response to what you believe, feel, and focus on. This is not mysticism. It is physics. And it's not happening far away in a laboratory. It's happening right now in the room around you, in the way time seems to slow during moments of crisis, in the way memories surface just when you need them, or how some places feel familiar even though you've never been there. Scientists call this phenomenon the observer effect, and it isn't a fringe idea. In fact, it's one of the most rigorously studied aspects of quantum mechanics. The classic double-slit experiment, refined by the delayed choice quantum eraser study, shows us that particles don't even behave like particles unless someone is observing them. The presence or absence of information of attention alters the outcome. From a scientific lens, this means that the universe is not fixed. From a philosophical lens, it means that consciousness isn't simply an observer of reality, it's a participant, maybe even a co-creator. That's a powerful shift for anyone at any age, but especially for those of us who have lived long enough to know that the stories we were told in our youth often left something out. Let's take a step back and look at ancient wisdom through a modern lens. In Egypt, death was never seen as an end, but as a passage to another layer of existence. The Book of the Dead wasn't just a religious text. It was a user manual, guiding the soul through gateways, challenges, and transitions, much like how a digital interface moves between different programs or states. These weren't just metaphors. They mirrored what quantum physicists today describe as shifts in dimensional awareness or transitions between states of consciousness. The Tibetans echoed this understanding in the Bardo Thodol, what we know as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which maps the stages of awareness after physical death. It describes a realm that is responsive, illusory, shaped by thought and intention. The language sounds spiritual, but the logic is strikingly familiar to those studying quantum fields and simulation theory. A flexible space where input consciousness determines experience. Even the ancient Gnostics, long before computers, described the world as a fabricated realm designed to obscure true divinity. They spoke of a demiurge, a false god who created a false world and urged seekers to awaken from the illusion by realizing their origin beyond the flesh. They weren't predicting the Matrix. They were describing, in mythic terms, what physicists like Nick Bostrom and Elon Musk now suggest with probability. That we are living inside a simulation, and the evidence isn't philosophical, it's statistical. According to Bostrom's model, if any civilization reaches a level of technological maturity capable of simulating consciousness, the number of simulated minds will vastly outnumber those in base reality. Which begs the question, what are the odds that you are in the one original reality? This is not meant to confuse or disturb. In fact, it may be the most liberating idea you've ever encountered. Because if reality is programmable, then your focus becomes your power. Your beliefs become levers. Your emotions, often brushed aside as mere side effects, are actually signals that interface with the code of your experience. Think of how you've seen this in your own life. Remember the times when your mindset shifted, and suddenly the world seemed to shift with it. A problem you couldn't solve becomes clear overnight. A person you needed appears by coincidence. Or the heaviness of a space disappears once you make peace within. These are not trivial events. They are signs that consciousness is the engine, not just the passenger. So what does this mean for you now? It means your thoughts are not passive. They are not background noise. They are shaping the very road beneath your feet. If you carry a belief that aging means decline, you will find endless proof of it. But if you begin to truly experiment with the idea that awareness continues to shape reality at every stage of life, you will begin to see cracks in the illusion. You will notice your energy respond. You will feel sharper, clearer, more purposeful. And yes, more alive. That's not magic. That's what happens when you stop running old scripts and start writing new ones. The invitation, then, is simple. Treat every thought as a brushstroke on the canvas of your experience. Choose your focus deliberately. When fear arises, pause and ask, is this signal serving the version of reality I want to live in? When doubt creeps in, respond with curiosity instead of contraction. And most importantly, remind yourself that you are not waiting for life to happen, you are participating in its unfolding. You are not a character trapped in a story. You are the one holding the pen. Let the ancients remind you, let the physicists confirm it, and let your own life demonstrate the truth. Reality is not fixed, death is not final, and you are not finished. You are only now beginning to remember how much power you've had all along. What if I told you that the greatest illusion of your life has not been death, but the belief that you are powerless in shaping your reality? That after all these years of living, struggling, loving, and losing, the most extraordinary truth is one that was quietly pulsing beneath every experience you've ever had. You are not a passenger on this journey. You are the engine. The science is catching up now, and so is philosophy, and they are converging to reveal something magnificent. Your consciousness is not just here to observe, it is here to create. When we examine the implications of quantum mechanics, particularly the many-worlds interpretation proposed by physicist Hugh Everett, we encounter a stunning possibility. Every decision, every action, every moment of hesitation or courage generates a branching path. In one timeline, you turned left. In another, you turned right. In one, you survived. In another, perhaps you didn't. But here's the secret that unlocks it all. Your awareness only continues in the version where you live. This is not fantasy. This is quantum immortality. And it suggests that your consciousness is always shifting, silently, seamlessly, into realities where your story keeps unfolding. Now think about what that means. All those times you nearly fell, nearly crashed, nearly didn't make it, the missed accidents, the near drownings, the surgeries that could have gone either way, they weren't just lucky breaks. They may have been transitions. You didn't survive by chance. You survived because your consciousness moved into the next version of reality, one where your narrative continues. And this isn't just supported by metaphysical speculation. The thought experiment called quantum suicide, proposed by physicist Max Tegmark, points to the same conclusion. A quantum device triggers a life-or-death outcome based on the spin of a particle. From the outside, the result is random. But from the participant's point of view, they only ever experience survival. Always, their awareness persists in the version where they live. That's you. You are the one who keeps going. You are the shifter, the survivor, the one who, without even knowing it, has crossed countless invisible bridges between possible worlds. Now bring this back to your everyday life. If your consciousness keeps choosing to survive, if your awareness always finds the version where you're alive, then why live as though you are fragile? Why live as if you are just enduring something inevitable, when the truth is, you are shaping everything with your perception, your focus, your energy? This is where ancient wisdom becomes modern application. In Stoic philosophy, Epictetus taught that while we cannot always control what happens, we can always control our response, and in that space of response, he believed, lies our power. The Stoics called it freedom. Today, quantum physicists call it influence over the field. The name doesn't matter. The effect is the same. You change the story by how you show up in it. That means every emotion you feel, every belief you carry, every narrative you repeat, becomes a kind of instruction, a signal sent to the simulation, to the quantum field, to the deeper structure of reality. And here is where it becomes practical. If you want to shift your reality on purpose, begin by becoming conscious of what you are inputting into the system. Are you affirming fear, scarcity, decline? Or are you choosing courage, clarity, and expansion? Because the field doesn't judge. It reflects. Think of your emotions like a tuning fork. Fear sends out a low vibration that attracts closed doors, tight timelines, and resistance. But when you choose gratitude, courage, or even curiosity, you unlock a new set of responses. The simulation updates. The field opens. You begin to notice new people, new patterns, new moments of alignment. You call it coincidence. But it's not. It's code, responding to your frequency. This is why spiritual teachers have always told us to pray with feeling, to visualize with conviction, to speak as if what we ask for is already done. because that emotional certainty becomes the signal that writes the next chapter. This is not wishful thinking. It is neurobiology and quantum physics working together. Your brain rewires itself based on repeated emotion and focus. Your subconscious, which governs 95% of your behavior, doesn't care what you say you want. It runs on what you feel to be true. So let me offer you a structure to work with. Each morning, before the noise of the world takes over, sit quietly for a few moments. Breathe deeply. Now ask yourself, if I believed that death was just a doorway and I were truly immortal, how would I live today? Then, feel the answer in your body. Not just the words, but the energy of that belief. Let it shape how you move, how you speak, how you choose. In the evening, write down 3 moments where your response shaped the moment, not the other way around. Reinforce the awareness that your state leads your story. And when fear comes, as it always will, speak directly to it. Not with denial, but with command. Say, "Thank you for trying to protect me, but I choose a different path now." This is not performance. This is participation. It is living not as the character, but as the coder. Because the truth is, you have already shifted through 1,000 silent deaths. You just kept waking up. And if that's true, then every moment that follows is a gift. Not the kind you receive, but the kind you get to shape. So I ask you now, with all the wisdom and years you carry, what would you create if you remembered that nothing, not even death, has ever truly stopped you? Start there. That's where your real life begins. Now that we understand death not as an ending but as a transition, and consciousness not as a prisoner of the brain but as a continuous field moving through layers of experience, we can begin to ask a far more empowering question. Can we influence the simulation consciously while still inside it? The answer, according to both ancient spiritual practices and modern scientific insight, is yes. The universe you perceive is not a static structure but a field of probabilities that responds to your input. In quantum physics, this is called wave function collapse, an unformed cloud of possibilities solidifying into form the moment observation and intention meet. Nobel laureate Eugene Wigner once said that consciousness is what causes the universe to exist. What he meant is this: without a conscious observer, the universe remains potential. The act of attention collapses the code. And this is not merely a poetic idea. In controlled experiments using random number generators, scientists at the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab discovered that focused human intention can statistically shift the outcome of machines designed to behave unpredictably. In other words, thought, especially when charged with emotion, alters physical data. That may sound small, but it is seismic. It confirms that consciousness has agency over matter, not just passively but actively. So what does this mean in your everyday life? It means that your reality is not something fixed that you walk through blindly. It is something that takes shape in direct response to the energy you bring to it. If you believe nothing ever changes, your mind will edit out anything that contradicts that belief. You won't see the opportunity, you won't feel the shift, because the simulation doesn't load what you haven't signaled readiness for. But if you begin to practice conscious engagement, if you begin to aim your thoughts and emotions with clarity, you will see just how much is waiting for you to direct it. Here's how it works. The simulation responds most powerfully not to vague hope, but to structured emotional frequency. This is why visualizing your desired outcome is so much more effective when paired with a strong feeling. Neuroscience backs this up. When you visualize with emotion, your brain fires the same circuits as if the event were actually happening. Do it repeatedly, and the subconscious begins to accept it as reality, triggering shifts in behavior, perception, and decision-making. That's not just mindset, that's rewiring. And when your internal code changes, the field around you updates accordingly. Let's make this practical. Start with something I call quantum priming. Each morning, before your habits kick in, close your eyes and picture the version of yourself who already feels the way you want to feel. See the version of your day where interactions are smooth, where energy is high, where synchronicity flows. Now, and this is the key, feel it. Not like you're pretending, like you're remembering something that already exists. Because from a quantum perspective, it does. Then hold that emotion for at least 2 full minutes. The brain takes roughly 90 seconds to begin shifting its state. You are teaching your system how to receive a different outcome. In the evening, use quantum journaling. Write a short paragraph describing your life as if it already matches your highest intention. Be vivid. Be emotional. Instead of saying, "I hope I feel better," say, "I feel strong and alert. My body responds with clarity. Opportunities show up all day." Your words are commands to the code. Your repetition reinforces the new structure. But there is another step, and it is equally essential. Detachment. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. When you beg reality to change, you're signaling that it hasn't. That tension pushes it away. But when you act as if it's already true, when you release the pressure and simply expect alignment, you create the vacuum where reality rushes in to meet you. Just as a thermostat doesn't scream for heat, it simply sets the temperature and trusts the system to adjust. You must learn to broadcast a steady frequency, not reactive spikes. This is what mystics called faith. It is not blind. It is functional. A steady emotional signal tells the simulation what version to render next. So when fear rises, do not wrestle it. Notice it, thank it for its old job of trying to protect you, and then shift your focus. Repetition creates dominance. Every time you re-choose the new story, you weaken the old one. Let the loop burn out from lack of your attention. Even medicine confirms this. The placebo effect, where belief in healing triggers actual healing, is a medically verified reality. Patients given sugar pills improve because their belief tells the body to respond. That is the simulation at work. Thought becoming biology. Intention becoming chemistry. So imagine what happens when you aim that belief with precision and consistency. Imagine if you walked each day not fearing death, but understanding it as a checkpoint in a system that you are already influencing. What if you lived like someone who cannot be destroyed, only transferred? How would you speak? How would you walk into a room? How would you face each decision? This is the invitation now. You are no longer here to survive. You are here to shift consciously, precisely, powerfully. Reality is waiting for your signal. Begin today. Set the tone every morning. Speak as if your truth is already real. Feel it as if it has already arrived. And when the world wobbles or throws shadows, do not flinch. Stay steady. The system is watching your frequency. It always was. And now, for the first time, you know exactly how to respond. Now that we have uncovered the mechanics of consciousness, glimpsed the illusion of death, and recognized the simulation not as metaphor but as an active interface, we arrive at the final and perhaps most liberating realization of all. You are not inside the simulation, you are the source from which it arises. That might sound too grand or abstract, especially to someone who has weathered real hardship, loss, and aging, but I ask you to consider what science and ancient wisdom are both now whispering to us. What you perceive as the outer world is, in truth, a projection of the inner signal you emit. Let's ground this in physics. The Holographic Universe Theory, supported by physicists like David Bohm and Leonard Susskind, proposes that the three-dimensional world we experience is actually a projection from a two-dimensional plane of encoded information. That means what we call solid reality is a kind of high-resolution display generated from a deeper layer of data. Imagine it like this. You are watching a film, but you've mistaken the screen for the source. You forgot that the reel is running behind you, that the light is coming from your own consciousness. And this projection doesn't end when the body does. Just as turning off a television does not destroy the signal, the cessation of physical life does not eliminate the field of awareness. The data continues. The source remains. The implications are as practical as they are profound. Every belief you hold becomes the code from which your experience is rendered. Neuroscientists confirm that the brain is not a passive recorder but an active interpreter. Your memories are reconstructed every time you recall them, filtered through your current emotions and expectations. This means even your past is fluid, not fixed. You are not bound to it. You can change your perception and the meaning you give to your history, and the simulation will update in kind. This is not hypothetical. In cognitive therapy, patients who reframe traumatic experiences with new understanding and emotion show measurable improvements in health, mood, and even immune function. What changes is not the event, but the signal they carry forward. That is rewriting the code. In this context, your subconscious becomes the master key. It controls 95% of your decisions, your perceptions, your habitual emotional states. Yet it is not stubborn. It is programmable. The formula is simple but powerful. Emotion plus repetition equals subconscious rewrite. And once the subconscious accepts a new script, the simulation must follow. So how do you apply this now, at this stage of life, after decades of thinking perhaps that reality was something you endured rather than shaped? Begin by observing your inner language. What do you say to yourself when no one else is listening? Are your words planting seeds of decay or possibility? Each morning, take one phrase you want to become real and speak it aloud with emotional clarity. I am not fading, I am evolving. I am not finished, I am shifting. My wisdom shapes what unfolds. Let these become daily scripts. Not empty affirmations, but emotional commands. Then build the image behind them. Visualization is not fantasy. It is rehearsal for the quantum field. Athletes use it. Surgeons use it. Your brain fires as if the event is happening. So see yourself walking stronger, breathing fuller, engaging life with curiosity again. Let your emotions lock in that image. When doubt creeps in, do not fight it. Simply shift channels. Just like changing the station on a radio, you don't need to destroy the static, you just tune to a better frequency. And remember this final truth. Fear is not your natural state. It was installed by systems meant to control, to limit, to keep you compliant. But once you know that death is only a shift, that reality is only responsive code, and that you are not the character but the architect, fear loses its leverage. You begin to live differently, more boldly, more presently. You begin to speak the language of creation rather than survival. And the world listens. Opportunities arise not because you chase them, but because your signal now matches the version of reality where they already exist. The path unfolds as you walk it. You are not here to quietly fade. You are here to light the next stage of your evolution. So I ask you now, not with urgency but with invitation. What signal will you choose to emit today? Will you let habit decide? Or will you remember that the code responds to your will? Begin with one thought. One feeling, one breath of full awareness. That is all it takes to shift the projection. The screen is waiting, and this time you are not watching someone else's story. You are writing your own.